Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Kyoto Bolt fam, it's the Director. Saddle up, Pilgrim. We're going to the playoffs. The Chargers this weekend will be facing the Houston Texans in the AFC wild card. How crazy is this, dude? As a Chargers fan and Chargers fans yourselves, sit back and reflect, man. Like where we were a season ago around this time, there was whispers about maybe Jim Harbaugh. We're all supporting the Michigan Wolverines to maybe help us move in that direction and landing Harbaugh. Then here we are a year later, reaping the benefits and the rewards of the Jim Harbaugh hire, going from a 5-win team to an 11-win team, making the postseason, and honestly, looking like a pretty good dang contender at that, man. The Chargers-Texans is going to be one to watch. Chargers fans ecstatic to see this matchup happen. It took an aligning of the stars to get this matchup. Now I think in the first, leg of the playoffs, Chargers stand their best chance at winning a football game. Justin Herbert's first in his career. I think it's time, man. I think it's time, and I think this is going to help shape the future, give us a sign of good things to come, and usher in a new era that Chargers fans get extremely excited about, man. We're going to unpack this game and have a lot of fun getting excited for our first postseason appearance in the Jim Harbaugh era. Before we do kick things off, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. And guess what, y'all? This is the week, dude. If this is your first time, if you've been looking for a good reason, hey, guess what? We got a Justin Herbert free pick for you newcomers, man. It's a great way to support my platform, have some fun along the way. Let's get some powder blue representing in the Underdog world, man. Before we do kick off, hit us up with the like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Your Chargers at Houston Texans AFC wildcard game preview. It's going to be a good one, man. But before we jump into all that, man, so just a reminder to everybody, what's going on out in L.A., the fires that have decimated the community, many people losing their homes and businesses, time of hardship for the folks in LA. If you guys are looking for a way to contribute, I would obviously point you in the direction of many different charitable organizations, including Red Cross and the Chargers, who have donated $200,000 to the relief efforts, also giving fans an opportunity to bring donations in forms of bottled waters, blankets, anything that you guys think you could help to support in that capacity. I know our thoughts and our prayers are with everybody out in the LA area that has been affected. Just reach out, see what you guys can do to help the community, and our prayers are with you guys. We hope the efforts to rebuild and bounce back are shorter than not. Now, to jump into this matchup, man, the Chargers-Texans. First things first, as we always do, injury report, who's in, who's out. Can I just say this too, man? Let's go back to Twitter here for just a second. The Chargers, in my opinion, have been masters at injury management this season. I wonder if I had posted any time recently. Now, I've tweeted something in the capacity of, I think Semi Fehoko was on his way back. Here we go. This was just reported by Eric Smith. The Chargers are opening the 21-day window for Semi Fehoko. And I said, I feel like the Chargers injury management has really leveled up this season. Of course, this comes along the lines of, like, we just got Alohi Gilman back. The Chargers very careful with, Rashawn Slater last week. It feels like when it matters the most, the Chargers are going to have a mostly healthy squad. Now, knock on wood, that continues throughout the course of the playoffs if the Chargers do make a run. But I think this just speaks to how well the Chargers' new coaching staff have managed the situation this season. Just feels like Ben Herbert and his crew, awesome job at keeping guys on the field. And if they're not on the field, it's for good reason. And there's a good chance that we'll get him back when it really matters, like in the Chargers playoff push here in early January. Now, a couple names to point out here. Eli Apple maybe making his return from injury. J.K. Dobbins still kind of looking at that. Of course, the Chargers did just sign Ezekiel Elliott. For those of you guys who haven't heard, honestly, I'm kind of excited about that signing. Of course, we're not expecting him to be, Zeke of his, first 3 seasons in the NFL now, but he's going to be a great, depth piece for this team. And then in case we need some help, for Gus and Dobbins, or I should say Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, who are both listed on the injury report, we at least have, a pretty capable guy in there. We got, of course, Kamani Vidal and Hassan Haskins, who will likely be ahead of him. But it's nice to see the front office taking these precautions and getting guys on the roster that could make a difference in these very important postseason games. As well as we mentioned before, Simi Fehoko returning from IR. That's a very, very good news. Zion Johnson looks like he's going to be fine. Quentin Johnson is going to be the one that I was wanting to point out. He had a breakout week last week, right? Nearly 200 yards. Huge effort in that dominant win over the Vegas Raiders. You could tell that he had something to prove in that game, and he sure did it. It looks like he's more or less fine, but there's an illness that he's dealing with. Hopefully, that more or less passes by Saturday when we'll need to call upon his talents once again in the postseason. I'm more hopeful than not, but it's something to keep an eye out for, especially since Josh Palmer is going to be out for this matchup once again, dealing with a foot injury. Last but not least, Jasir Taylor listed as doubtful for this matchup. Something, again, to keep an eye out for how the Chargers going to handle, the lack of help at corner. They seem to have been doing really good this season as a whole, but again, something in a playoff caliber match that you want to make sure that you're on top of. As for the Houston Texans, more or less seems like everybody's good. A couple of names to list out here, though. Shaq Mason, a capable guard, is going to be out for this one, making life a little bit more difficult for C.J. Stroud versus a very capable pass rush of the Chargers. Danico Autry, another capable defensive end, is questionable. Christian Harris, linebacker. And then I'm not going to be trying to pronounce the last name down here. Teagan, we'll call him TQ. Also listed as questionable. They're tied in. More or less looks like the Houston Texans are ready to go, at least with, what the injury report is stating. There are very many players, for the Houston Texans that will not be suiting up due to IR, injury reserve. Tank Dell's not going to be there. Stephon Diggs not going to be there. Some big names that are going to be missing out in this matchup that we're going to go over a little bit later on in the video. Now, to kick off our first category here, and this is one that I kind of touched on at the top of the video. This one's called First of Many. Man, Chargers fans, congratulations. I can firmly say, and I know many of us feel the same way at this point, the new era has turned in, right? We're in a new era of Chargers football. The Jim Harbaugh era has arrived, and this, to me, is the first of many. Because you got to look at the situation. Like I alluded to at the top of the video, the Chargers were a 5-win team last season. We had the roster, we had, the talent, we just did not have the results, and that was, I feel, firmly due to the lack of coaching that we had at the time, Brandon Staley, et cetera, et cetera. Now you turn a new leaf. Here comes Jim Harbaugh, brings in a whole new staff, and that's probably a huge part of it too, man. Not just the fact that we got Harbaugh, we got everybody that comes with Harbaugh, because Harbaugh, it feels like he states, he's only as good as the people around him, as smart as the people around him, and he does a very good job at surrounding himself with very capable football-minded individuals. All this came together for a beautiful Chargers playoff appearance in a season that, I'm going to be honest, not very many people betted on us making the postseason, having a double-digit win season, being a success in the first season of Jim Harbaugh, which is crazy because everywhere he goes, he takes a bad team, turns them into a good team, like that, immediately. And what happens after that? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but the history sure tells us that we're in good hands. Jim Harbaugh taking Michigan Wolverines all the way to a national championship and winning. You had the 49ers years back that he took all the way to the Super Bowl before, departing for college football. Stanford, San Diego, everywhere he goes, it feels like the trajectory is up, especially for teams that have historically been struggling. And now it's the Chargers' turn. This feels real. And I hope for many Chargers fans, you feel the same way as I do. It's very validating to the legitimacy of this team and the legitimacy of the future and how bright it could be. First of many, Bolt fans, soak it in, have fun with it, live in the moment, understand that we may be indeed living in the good times. So live it up while you can. get excited for the future and just be so damn proud of this Chargers football team that has dramatically turned it around in just one season and are making a big push now into the postseason. And this is a legitimate contender, man, a legitimate contender. But let's not be fooled. This will not be a walk in the park. I know a lot of Chargers fans, we're all rooting for it, right? There was a specific road that needed to be taken in order for the Chargers to match up with the Houston Texans instead of the Baltimore Ravens. And don't get me wrong, man. I was all about a Harbaugh 2, a 2.0, another matchup with John Harbaugh. But this was definitely the road easier taken at this point, right? If you want to advance in the postseason, you're more likely to beat the Texans than you are the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm sure the Texans were thinking the same thing about us, right? I would rather play the Chargers than the Baltimore Ravens. And, well, here we are, man. Chargers, Texans, one will stand tall. And, again, just because it's probably the better route for the Chargers to take doesn't mean it's going to be a walk in the park. Welcome to the postseason, baby. It's been a minute since we've been here, legitimate contenders. Every game from here on out is going to be a tough one. Every team we play from here on out, especially, considering if we do advance beyond this game, is going to be very, very legitimate, very dangerous, very serious. And the Houston Texans are among those teams. A very good football team, very good quarterback, very good offense. Defense has some very big strengths. It's going to be a test, a tough one. And it's going to be, something that Chargers fans know that if we're going to prove, we're ready for the future, one that hopefully a lot of us are rooting to win because, Justin Herbert's been battling these narratives for a long time. Chargers fans been battling these narratives for a long time. Just one playoff win, I think, makes a lot of that go away. And I think the Chargers are capable, but we got to treat this game with the utmost respect, the utmost seriousness. The Houston Texans, very, very legitimate football team, one that we're going to have to figure out a way to take down candidly and cleanly on Saturday. All right? Now, to break down their team a little bit, I think first and foremost, when you think Houston Texans nowadays, who do you think of? It's going to be C.J. Stroud, new, I would not say rookie quarterback, but young quarterback for the organization. Definitely taking this team to new heights, and they have a very bright future ahead of them due to the talent of C.J. Stroud, who, yes, isn't having as good of a season as his rookie year. Everybody was putting him in the top 5 quarterbacks. I mean, for good reason. He had a killer rookie year, challenging Justin Herbert in very many categories. But definitely not the same season this year. Not the follow-up season is not what Houston Texans fans had hoped for. I think the touchdowns being cut in half, the efficiency taking a bit of a hit. And now we're looking at a situation where C.J. Stroud definitely maybe a little bit vulnerable. But let's not be, hasty here. He's very capable quarterback, still very dangerous. Earlier in the season, he did hit a stride versus some pretty good teams. In particular, the Buffalo Bills, who they did take down earlier in the year. He had a couple of games there where he was passing for over 300, 350 yards in those contests. And this is the kind of games that he's very capable of. Something Chargers fans need to keep in the front of their minds. Like, hey, watch out. We got to find a way to keep this guy contained. And then throughout the regular season, very, normal for him to hit in the mid-200s, scramble for a few yards here and there. Very, very capable quarterback, despite, not having as good of a season as his rookie year. I will say, though, on the topic of fairness here, okay, and recency, the Houston Texans have not been quite as offensively dangerous in the last month or so as they have been throughout the last couple of seasons. They've slowed down recently. They struggled mightily versus, the Miami Dolphins and, of course, the Baltimore Ravens. And then last week, of course, we're not going to hold it too much against them. I think it was the Titans, right, where they rested most of their starters. I think in those contests, CJ not producing at least 200, sometimes not even 150 yards in those games. It's kind of, the trend as of right now. Will he bounce back? He could. Something the Chargers fans have to be very wary of. Like, he could have a big game versus the Chargers defense. But I will say, in terms of caliber of defense that the Houston Texans have played recently, the Chargers are among the top with guys like Baltimore, KC, and now ourselves, LA. A playoff caliber quarterback, very dangerous, capable player, but one that is kind of on a low swing right now. Hopefully the Chargers still catch him in that mode, and the defense punishes him for maybe a couple of mistakes here and there. For a quarterback who is still relatively young, bright future, very capable of popping off in this game. But one who, again, he's kind of on the swing right now. where he's going to need some momentum to kick back himself into the upward trajectory. Okay? What about his weapons? That may actually have something to do with it. Now, Nico Collins, one of the best wide receivers in football, right? This is a guy that, honestly, who knows what's going to happen. He could pop for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. He could pop for 50 yards and no score. That's the thing, though, right? Just like with CJ Stroud, like, hey, he's kind of on this downward trend, but he could pop. It's the playoffs, right? There's a new energy, new life, wipe the slate clean. Everyone starts from zero. It's the postseason. And Nico's another name that we got to respect, right? He's the real deal. Real deal. Dude can win football games on his back. Kind of reminds people of, I don't know, like a new Mike Evans, big, physical targets, got some speed behind him. But like CJ Stroud, again, in recent games, maybe played down a little bit. He's only eclipsed 100 yards in 4 games this season and just once in the last 8 games. Of course, you have to think injury had something to do with it, maybe hampered his season just a little bit. Very dangerous weapon, but like CJ Stroud and much of the Houston Texans offense, everything's a little bit, rough right now. I think there's some injury stuff going on, a lot of weapons on IR. Nico, still very dangerous, very capable of popping a big game, also a bit slow to start out, but I would be very, very cautious of letting him getting going because, when Stroud and Nico start clicking and they start getting that momentum, they're very, very difficult to slow down. So it's going to be the Chargers' mission on Saturday to keep that from happening. Keep the game in front of you. Don't let them get hot. And I think the Chargers' defense very well suited to keep that from happening. But outside of Nico Collins, I got to tell you, man, this is probably why CJ Stroud isn't having as massive of a follow-up season as he did last year. Is because his weapons not quite up to par. Like Tank Dell was going crazy last season. I kept him in fantasy football because he was an awesome weapon for CJ Stroud. Definitely not the same, chemistry as we saw last year. Production as we saw last year. They went and got Stephon Diggs. Amazing. Got hurt a little earlier on in the season as well. So no. And Tank Dell, by the way, also out. Not available to the team right now. So with Tank Dell out, Stephon Diggs out. 2 huge names in the wide receiver, pool out there, man. What does CJ Stroud turn to? You got guys like John Mechie. Got Robert Woods, veteran. Deontay Johnson, I know they just recently signed him as well. Say what you want about Johnson and his discipline with the Ravens and all that kind of stuff. Still a great wide receiver. Could pop off in this game, so keep him in the back of your mind. Those guys will need to step in. But definitely not as dangerous as what he had earlier in the season. And maybe why CJ Stroud hasn't been the same quarterback this year for a large part of the season. Tank Dell was a big presence. You know what I mean? Stephon Diggs was a big deal at the earlier part of the year. Now without those weapons, can they improvise? Maybe. It could happen. Chargers fans are not unfamiliar with this, right? We see, especially in the last 5 or so years with Keenan Allen, and especially Mike Williams, Justin Herbert had to perform miracles, and you saw it all the time, but it just made life a little bit more hectic, a little less consistent. We'll wait and see. Maybe somebody steps up. Watch out for, again, Deontay Johnson kind of itching in the back of my mind. But John Mechie and Robert Woods also very capable. Also keep an eye out for, I would say, the number 2 target right now in my mind is probably going to be Dalton Schultz, their tight end. Right? I think he's got like 500-ish yards on the season. Maybe the next best receiver next to Nico Collins. Those are the weapons to worry about. But the number 1 weapon I'm going to say the Chargers probably need to try and shut down this week outside of CJ Stroud is definitely going to be Joe Mixon. What a signing for the Texans, man. Joe Mixon, very injury-plagued in Cincinnati, right? It seems like that guy could never stay on the field, which was a shame because he was so good with Joe Burrow and that unit out there in Cincinnati. Well, he takes a trip to the Texans and honestly puts up a great season, right? 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. When he gets going, he goes hard, man. And he can have some really, really big games. And we've seen it throughout the course of the season. He's been on a touchdown, rampage. Very capable and dangerous weapon for Houston. But again, the rest, and I'm going to say this, right? He has also, like the rest of the offense, been on this downward trend. And to be fair, again, last week, everybody rested Houston rested their first team after, like a quarter or something like that, maybe even a couple of drives. So everyone that week gets a pass. But I will mention that Joe Mixon in his previous 3 games, before that game, they were pretty rough, man. 9 carries for 26 yards versus Baltimore. 14 carries for 57 yards at Kansas City. 12 carries for 24 yards versus Miami. You know, it's been a minute since we've seen a really big Joe Mixon game. And the Chargers can be a really tough defense to run against. But keep that in mind, man. The Joe Mixon, very dangerous. Again, like every other offensive weapon we've seen on this list right now, they can pop. They can be crazy. It's the postseason. It's AFC wild card. Nothing can be taken for granted here. But they are in an arena right now where they kind of have to break through some barriers to get back to that form of earlier on in the season. But the reason I say this is probably the number one weapon to slow down outside of CJ Stroud, of course, is because you take away the run game, you keep Joe Mixon contained, you're forcing CJ Stroud to carry. And CJ Stroud, man, he's not invulnerable to interceptions and young quarterback mistakes. It's something we need to push towards. Push the game towards a passing game for the Houston Texans, and you're dramatically raising your chances at swinging the game in favor of the Chargers and forcing mistakes by CJ Stroud trying to play Superman. Very, very, very reminiscent to games of the past for Chargers fans and Justin Herbert. Herbert, again, in some seasons, needs to take care of the football better, and it's because he's getting pass rushed like crazy. Pressured like crazy. He's forced to play Superman. We need to force that on CJ Stroud this week. All right? The last thing I will say, very, very important, the Chargers pay extra close attention to this. Unfortunately, we're in a good position to counter it. But Houston's pass rush is ridiculous this year. They boast one of the best pass rushes in football. Chargers not unfamiliar with this. We've played very many teams that have very good pass rushing. But this is another really great one. Okay? Danielle Hunter. How old is that dude at this point, right? He had a crazy season. Will Anderson. Both those guys, double-digit sacks apiece. And then on top of that, you add all the other sacks from the remainder of the team. I think this is a top 5 sack-producing squad in football. Very dangerous, and probably a big reason why they're in the postseason to begin with. The defense has stepped up in very many ways, none bigger than their pass rush. Chargers have to find a way to shut it down. Now, here's the thing, though. The Chargers, we might have the best tackle duo that the Houston Texans have faced this season, which is very good news for us, right? Last week, of course, Rashawn Slater rested just in case, very precautionary, did not play. He will be suiting up this week versus Houston. We have Joe Alt. You combine those two, they're two of the best tackles in all of football, maybe a top 3, maybe even the best bookend tackle duo in the entirety of the NFL. They're the real deal, including Joe Alt, who I'm, again, sporting today. This is Houston fans. If you're watching this and you're thinking, we're all harping about Joe Alt and how good he is and how he's a rookie playing at a veteran, all-pro, elite level. Well, us fans, man, we take it very seriously as well. This is maybe the first offensive lineman jersey I have bought since back in the San Diego days with Nick Hardwick. This dude is the real deal. He's a Pro Bowler. He's top 5, if not top 3 caliber right tackle in the league right now in his rookie season. Unbelievable. So that gives me a lot of hope. Rashawn Slater, already very proven Pro Bowl guy this season. Chargers got some good ones in there. Hopefully the interior of the line can hold up, but those two guys give me a lot of hope. And the other thing that gives me a lot of hope versus this unit, the Chargers just played the number 1 pass rush in football in the Denver Broncos. Wasn't a perfect game, but they allowed just 2 sacks, which I guess is very reasonable versus the number 1 pass rushing team in football. Okay? So watch out for the Houston pass rush, but the Chargers have a good counter in their 2 stud tackles on that offensive line. A lot of us very grateful for Jim Harbaugh all of a sudden in that foresight, and Joe Ortiz in drafting Joe Alt to help the Chargers rookie, or say young quarterback. Not young anymore, right? Feels like we just got him. And Justin Herbert have a great career with Jim Harbaugh. Speaking of Justin Herbert, man, this segment's called Herbert's Eater. I mentioned it very many times. I'm going to mention it one more time, okay? As a genuine Chargers football fan who has certainly been around a while and very evidently around Herbert's entire career. I will tell you, in my observing of his tendencies, Herbert can get in like CJ Stroud right now, and kind of a swing, that's downward a little bit. Like, he'll get cold for sometimes 3 or 4 games. It feels like the season's over. Chargers fans are panicking. And then he hits that upswing, man. And that, I should say this way, that upswing, man. And that momentum starts hitting. Things start clicking. Plays start happening. Like, all of a sudden, here's Justin Herbert, the top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And guess what? He's there right now. He's on that upward swing. The Chargers are peaking at the perfect time. We've put in a stomp down the last couple of teams, man. The momentum is going hard right now. Chargers stomping the lights out of the Raiders last week. We'll say, what was it, 34-13? Now, they scored a garbage time touchdown, that's right, but we'll say 34-13, right? The Bolts dropping huge numbers on the New England Patriots as well. Herbert's on fire. And one of those intangibles that I always talk about in my videos that can't be recorded, but is always whispered about, is momentum. Herbert's got it right now. He's on his heater. The Chargers got momentum. The offense is clicking. Man, we've been putting up points, dude. What, like 34 last week? Was it 40 the week before? Yeah. Man, offense is here. Our biggest struggle throughout the season, we're peaking at the perfect time, and Justin Herbert, our fearless leader, is also on a heater at the perfect time where it really matters. Chargers going into the postseason with a very capable quarterback, number 1 in very many metrics over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Definitely top 5 in the NFL over the last month. Watch out, Houston Texans. You're getting one of the best versions of Justin Herbert in this Saturday matchup. Of course, I'm sure he's going to pay a lot of dividends to his weapons that have really come into their own in the second half of the season. Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston. Man, Ladd and QJ. What a tour it's been for these guys the last month, huh? Last couple of weeks even. Man, I really wish we had McConkey versus the Chiefs, because I think we would have seen a different game there. We may get another shot at them later in the postseason if the Chargers advance. But this has been a great season for the Chargers. Figuring it out, man. Ladd McConkey feels like wide receiver 1. He's the real deal. Big weapon, big time, improvising threat for Justin Herbert. We saw that many times last week even. These guys are just kind of in sync. You know what I mean? They're going to make it happen. If you got time, you're going to see the connection. You saw Quentin Johnston pop off for nearly 200 yards. Hopefully he plays in that game. Chargers weapons and the passing game in particular so important in this matchup, in my opinion, because you're going to want to make sure you stay ahead of the Texans as long as possible. Force CJ Stroud to pass it. More importantly, I'm going to say that the passing game, in particular, the play action game that the Chargers have been playing recently this season, amazing. That all kind of, falls on the shoulders of Herbert and his weapons. And right now, again, they're all hot, which is great. I'm a little worried about Quentin Johnston. If he plays, if he's at 100%, if he's still ill, whatever the case may be. But again, we might have Simi Fehoko back. DJ Chark got his first touchdown last week. There are guys all of a sudden. And perhaps, again, one of the more underrated aspects of the entire unit, J.K. Dobbins is back. Had another good game last week. Hit his $150,000 contract bonus. Everybody was rooting for him there. And he's got help now, man. It feels like Kamani Vidal, very capable. Of course, Gus Edwards. That's a great 1-2 punch with those two guys. Hassan Haskins has had some good games. Now we got Ezekiel Elliott on top of that. Chargers' run game feels like it's in a good spot right now. And in particular, J.K. Dobbins being back, very, very important. The offense just feels like in the earlier part of the season, it was clicking so well when J.K. was in the lineup. Well, he's here. Chargers going to have a decent enough opportunity to run versus the Houston Texans defense and get that momentum, hold on to control, and then control the clock. I think the Chargers, when they have that kind of control, when you give Jim Harbaugh that kind of opportunity, they latch on, they don't let go, and I want to see that in this game. How crazy would that be, man? Chargers run game clicking, play action clicking. It feels like the offense has an opportunity here to keep things in front of them for the most part. Hopefully they're up to the challenge. Last but not least, talk about the defense a little bit. The Chargers defense, they feel like they're firmly back. Am I the only Chargers fan that feels this way? Chargers defense feels like they're back. They've made their way back. The number 1 scoring defense in the NFL, who's allowed, 20 or less points in most of their matchups this season. It feels like they are really, again, hitting that stride. getting hot now, peaking at the right moment. This best version of the Chargers defense feels like they're here, baby. And despite a few drawbacks, right? Tampa Bay was one of them. I think Denver, we even allowed like 27 points or something like that too. This has been the best scoring defense in football. Numbers don't lie. Results don't lie. A big reason why the Chargers are even here to begin with. This defense has been insane. And it feels like they're back in form, dude. And this is a great opponent to be back in form for. Texans, I think, really lean heavily on the abilities of their offense, the star power of the quarterback, the receiver, the running back. And with the Chargers defense performing, at peak levels right now, it just raises our chances at winning this game dramatically. Big part of that, too, has been the pass rush. Man, Joey Bosa, let's go out with a bang, dude. Let's get some playoff wins. Let's make a push here because we don't know if he's going to come back next season. That pass rushing unit, man, they have been on it. Funny enough, what was it? Bosa with 5 sacks. Lil Mack with 6, I believe. Tuli Tuipulotu, 8 sacks on the season. And let's not forget Bud Dupree, who has a good number as well. I think it's like 6 as well. Chargers just have this revolving door of insane pass rushers, keeping everybody fresh, keeping everybody dangerous. This resulted in like a top, I think it was 6 most sacks in the NFL this season. This is a good opponent to boast that strength with on defense. Because CJ Stroud sacked the second most in the NFL. And this has produced a lot of mistakes. And maybe a big reason why his season this year is not as good as his rookie season. And I think this is another game where the Chargers pass rush is going to have some success. And a lot of it. A big reason is, too, because of this guy. Derwin James has been that wild card factor. In the wild card game, we need a wild card factor on defense. He's been awesome. 5.5 sacks for Derwin James this year. He's been a menace coming off the edge. He's been a menace in coverage. He's been awesome. It feels like Derwin's dogs out there right now, man. And they are producing. And when you put CJ Stroud in a situation where he's going to get sacked, he's under pressure most of that game, he'll produce mistakes, and those mistakes produce turnovers. He's thrown 12 this season under pressure. 12 interceptions. That's something the Chargers, I firmly believe, are going to take advantage of this week. So, guys, let me know in the comment section below, before I put mine out there, your score predictions for this AFC wildcard matchup. Chargers, Houston Texans. Will the Chargers grab the win? Will they get their first win for Justin Herbert in his young career? What does the first playoff appearance for Jim Harbaugh look like? I'm going to give you guys my score prediction. I think the Chargers are going to win this football game, baby. I got the Chargers winning this one 26 to the Houston Texans 16. I think a lot of things put on display this game that reflect on recent weeks for both teams. Chargers on a heater, putting up a ton of points every week. Defense is doing their job. Houston Texans, again, downward swing, not producing as many points. Defense, maybe allowing a little bit more. Who knows? Or I should say the offensive weapons not producing as much as they have in the first half of the season. Yeah, man, 26-16. I'm going to plant my flag there and hope it happens, man, because if the Chargers get their first win in the postseason with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, it's going to reflect so much positivity throughout this fandom, throughout this organization. I think in terms of the NFL really cementing our place as a legitimate contender going forward. Big game. But more importantly, in my eyes, and some people are going to hate me for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, man, it gives us a shot to bounce back and perhaps face the Kansas City Chiefs again. I don't know about you guys. I want another crack at KC. I really, really do. Got to get through the Texans first. Got to put all your attention and all of your effort into this game and focus for this week. But I would feel very blessed if we got another shot at the Kansas City Chiefs this year, because I think, honestly, truthfully, I think we can take them. I really do. But to do that, we got to prove ourselves versus a very capable team, the Houston Texans. How do you think the Chargers will do? Do they get their first playoff win? Let me know in the comment section below. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Good luck to my Los Angeles Chargers in the postseason, baby. Let's go grab our first dub under Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. As always, guys, thank you so much for joining me. We'll catch you next time. As always, bolt up and stay frosty. Let's continue this heater, Justin Herbert. Let's grab that playoff win, dude. You deserve it.